Hey guys, tonight we're drifting off beneath the soft rustling of mangrove leaves, where the Indian Ocean hums like a lullaby and a low slung moon paints long silver lines across the water. You're standing barefoot on the grainy sand of a Swahili village, somewhere along the East African coast, maybe around the 14th century. Wooden boats called dhows lean on their keels like sleeping camels, ropes gently creaking, their triangular sails lowered and folded like napkins after dinner. A sea breeze carries hints of cloven smoke, and behind you, someone is lazily humming while roasting cassava. You probably won't survive this. By the way, you've eaten exactly 0 salted octopus in your life, and you've never tied a sail with a piece of goat gut. But that's okay tonight. We're not here to conquer storms or barter ivory. We're here to close our eyes, float back centuries, and let the rhythm of tides and stories cradle us to sleep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background humming, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squint at the horizon. Somewhere out there is the island of Pemba, or maybe Lamu, or maybe just 100 miles of unbroken sea. The water looks black until the moon catches a current and turns it to pewter. Fishermen nearby are hauling up nets, their voices low and sleepy, while an elder leans against a pile of coiled rope, picking his teeth with a fishbone. Here in this little village, one that might not even have a name on modern maps, navigation is not just an art. It's dinner. It's survival. It's a kind of lullaby passed from one generation to the next, mostly by watching, listening, and getting wet. Historians still argue whether Swahili maritime culture arose independently or evolved directly from interactions with Persian and Arab traders. But either way, it's old, older than that suspicious dried fish in the net old. Some say the earliest coastal settlements traded with the Red Sea by the 2nd century CE. Your host tonight, let's call him Zibaraka, sits cross-legged with a bowl of tea and half a coconut shell in his hand. The shell's insides are carved not letters, not pictures, but notches and little holes, arranged like a messy dice. For the stars, he says, tapping it softly. When the sky is blind, you'll learn soon enough that coconut shells, unlike scrolls, don't smudge. And unlike maps, they float. A navigator might tie strings through those notches to represent stars, or winds, or islands, the sea's geometry made portable. Some skeptics claim these shell maps are more folklore than fact. Perhaps they were teaching tools, not active navigational gear. But then again, try handing a parchment map to a wave and see how long that lasts. As the moon climbs, Zibaraka hums low and tuneless, tracing his finger across imaginary constellations. South, then east, he murmurs. Smell for nutmeg. Listen for gulls. When the sea tastes sweet, you're too close to river mouths. Sharks like that. You laugh softly. It's probably a joke. Probably a small child nearby rolls a clove pod between their palms and yawns. There's not much rush here. Dhow journeys are governed by monsoons, and when the wind's not right, neither is the day. You travel only when the wind says yes. That's something the Western world often forgets, that for most of human history, the sea was not a frontier to conquer, but a moody god to negotiate with. And sometimes that negotiation involves waiting under a mango tree for 2 weeks. Behind you, a low drumbeat starts, not urgent, just there. A gentle reminder that everything is moving, even when you're not. You close your eyes and listen to the sea breathe. There's a rhythm to this place where history never really ended. The boats are old, the roots older, and the smell of fish and salt and smoke is timeless. Somewhere in the village, someone is telling a story, maybe about a sailor who followed the stars wrong and ended up trading chickens for sapphires by mistake. Or maybe it's the tale of the boy who dreamt of the moon and woke up on an island with no name. You're not sure if you're hearing these stories or dreaming them. Doesn't matter. You're in now, in the stillness, in the breeze, in the long glide into sleep. You wake, if you can call it that, to the sound of sandals crunching over crushed coral. It's still dark, but not quite night. That strange in-between time when even the moon seems unsure of itself. Your feet are coated in dry salt, the kind that sneaks between your toes and sticks, a stubborn souvenir from yesterday's tides. Welcome to the morning of the voyage. The villagers call this kujanda preparation, but it doesn't look like much. A few bundles of dried fish wrapped in palm fronds, a small basket of cloves, a jar of lime paste, and of course, the all-important, suspiciously sacred coconut shells. One for drinking, one for navigating, one for luck. It's never clear which is which. You help Mzee Baraka carry a few gourds of fresh water to the boat. He mutters about balance, not just the load, but the spirit. Don't bring too much, he warns, or the sea will ask for something back. Historians still argue whether such sayings were practical, seafaring advice or cultural metaphor, but here, there's no such distinction. Every object hums with memory. Every gesture means something, even the way you tie the rope under. Not over, because over invites storms. As you approach the dhow, you notice a palm leaf mat spread across the deck. On it, someone has placed a curious offering, a strip of shark skin, 3 stones, and a single banana. A bad joke. Mzee Baraka grunts. Someone's being funny. You later learn that bringing bananas on a boat is considered a curse in many Indian Ocean cultures. Something about their slipperiness, their softness, or maybe just the way they bruise so easily. Not seaworthy. Like you, the preparations continue, slowly, like a yawn. Someone boils cassava and smokes strips of octopus. A teenage boy carefully knots beads onto a piece of twine, a charm to ward off the papeda. Those mischievous sea spirits that tickle your feet and sink your boat if you're not careful. Meanwhile, the village elder is making a show of ignoring everyone. He leans against a crate of sweet potatoes and whistles tunelessly. When someone asks if he has advice for the journey, he says, "Keep your socks dry." Wait, you don't have any? The air is thick with salt and clove oil, and under it all, a feeling not tension, not exactly excitement either, more like that slow breath you take just before a plunge. You're handed a clay pot. Don't open it. They say, not until the 4th day. What's inside depends how good you are at not opening things. It's an odd truth of these Swahili coast journeys. Half the cargo seems to be jokes. A coconut with a frown carved into it. A carved spoon labeled emergency. A rolled-up reed mat tied with string and labeled snake-proof, though it's clearly too short to cover anything. But these are not just games. They're spells, in their own way. Small rituals to make the voyage feel less like a leap into danger and more like a trip you've done before, maybe last week, maybe in another life. The dhow itself is slim and noble, stitched with coconut fiber rope and coated in a tar-like mixture made from mangrove bark and fish oil. It smells like 1,000 past journeys, all crammed into one piece of wood. You run your hand along its edge, smooth in some places, sharp in others. Just like people, a quiet moment passes. The sea makes its low, groaning sounds. A gull cries once, then stops, like even it has second thoughts. Suddenly, a splash. A child has tossed something into the shallows, a fish head, maybe, or a bit of fruit for the sea gods, they say. Or for the fish. Hard to tell. It's finally time. The sails are ready. The food is packed. The charms are tied. Mzee Baraka climbs aboard and looks at you. "You still here?" he says, half amused, half impressed. You step onto the deck, careful not to trip over a coiled rope that may or may not be sleeping. The boat rocks gently, already impatient to leave. As you drift away from shore, you hear a voice call after you. Don't forget to look sad when you return. That way, they'll believe it was hard. You smile. Or maybe you dream you smile already. The shore is behind you, blurred by sea mist and memory. And up ahead, just water, wind, and coconut shells full of secrets. You're out on open water now, where the sea rolls slow and deep like it has all the time in the world. And maybe it does. The dhow creaks with every breath of wind, the sail tugging gently at its mast like a child pulling on their mother's sleeve. The coastline has vanished behind a soft haze, and in its place is everything and nothing, just sea, sky, and the steady hush of waves. You sit cross-legged beside Mzee Baraka, who has produced the coconut shell map again, this time tied with loops of string. He holds it up like a puzzle. The strings crisscross like spider silk, connecting tiny notches and holes carved with a nail, or maybe a shark tooth. This, he says, is how we don't get lost. Now, full disclaimer, it still looks like a fruit bowl with a spider problem, but Baraka's hands are sure. He tilts the shell so it catches the sunlight, and suddenly, something shifts. You see how the strings trace constellations, simple ones, not Western figures like Orion or Cassiopeia, but lines the sailors call Nyamaya Angani, sky animals, the crocodile, the sleeping goat, the weeping palm, some you've never heard of, some maybe no one has outside of this boat. The idea, Baraka explains, is simple. When the stars aren't visible or when clouds decide to nap across the heavens, you float the coconut shell in water and watch how it turns. The swell, the current, the weight of salt in the water, all these things affect how it spins. Each rotation, each tilt tells a different story. Combine that with a memory of wind patterns, a nose tuned to spice in the air, and 1,000 quiet sunrises. And you've got yourself a map, sort of. Historians still argue whether this coconut shell technique was truly navigational, or if it was more symbolic part of a broader oral system of direction, passed down over generations. But try saying that out loud here, and see how fast someone flicks you with a fishbone. You lean in. There's a notch on the shell that lines up with the setting sun. Another points roughly north where Baraka says, the sky smells of dates and politics. You smile, but he's not joking. The wind picks up, and the dhow glides forward. Below you, the sea turns from green to navy to the kind of deep blue that makes your stomach drop a little if you stare too long. Someone behind you hums a tune, no words. Just the kind of sound that seems to grow naturally out of the ocean. A sailor walks by balancing a tray of roasted chickpeas and pickled lime slices, offering them like it's a Sunday picnic. You take one? It's sharp enough to wake a seagull, but you eat it anyway. It helps somehow. The boat gently dips and rises. The sail flutters and sighs. The world narrows to the width of a boat and the stretch of sky above it. Then Baraka nods upward. There, he says. You look up and squint. It's a single star, barely visible in the growing light, not the North Star. This one they call Machela wa Bahari, the sea's grain of rice. He tells you that when that star lines up with the left edge of your sail, you're still on course to reach Malindi, unless the fish lie, he adds, deadpan. And of course, they sometimes do. Fish lie by swimming in circles. Birds lie by flying the wrong way home. Even the wind, now and then, tells fibs just to see if you're paying attention, but that's part of the fun. Navigation in this world is not science. It's poetry, with a little math and a lot of patience. A gull lands on the prow of the boat and regards you like it's conducting an interview. You're not from here, it seems to say. You nod. It fluffs its feathers and drops a perfectly timed poop near your sandal. Initiation complete. You watch Baraka float the coconut shell again, this time whispering something under his breath. A blessing. A reminder. A weather report in verse. It doesn't matter. What matters is the rhythm, the sea's pulse, The fact that a hollow fruit, a few strings, and a sky full of stories have guided people across these waters for centuries. You lean back, let your eyes close for just a moment. The boat rocks gently, a cradle carved from history, and the wind carries the smell of cloves and salt, and something else, something that might be cinnamon, or might just be the memory of it. The wind is warm against your cheek as you drift onward, but something has changed. The sky, once a soft watercolor of dawn, has grown petulant and gray, like it forgot how to smile. The swell has thickened to less of a lull, more of a shrug from beneath. Mzee Baraka looks up, squints at the clouds, and mutters a word you don't recognize. It sounds like a sigh wrapped in a warning. This, he says, tapping the mast with 2 fingers, is the monsoon pretending it's still sleeping. You glance at the sail. It's holding for now, but the dhow rocks slightly harder with each passing minute. No one panics. That would be too loud. But the crew begins the quiet ballet of tightening ropes, checking bundles, and making offerings with their eyes. Monsoons rule these waters like moody landlords. Historians still argue whether Swahili sailors timed their journeys with precision, born of generations of empirical observation, or if they simply crossed their fingers and waited for the first cloud to blink. Probably both. In reality, departures were carefully calibrated to the Kaskazi and Kusi winds, northeasters and southeasters, that dictated the entire rhythm of trade, marriage, storytelling, and tea drinking across the coast. But sometimes the monsoon lies. You hear it first, not thunder. Not wind, but silence. The kind of silence that only exists just before something forgets how to hold still. Then, without warning, the sky drops a curtain of mist, and the horizon vanishes into a murky nothingness. It's not a storm, not yet, but it's a mood, a weather tantrum, the kind that tests your shell, your sail, your soul. Baraka points to the coconut map, now tethered in a small bowl of seawater near the center of the boat. It spins, slowly, counterclockwise. She's unsure, he murmurs. Could be Socotra, could be your grandmother's front yard. You hope it's not the latter. She didn't like guests. The dhow lists gently left, then corrects E. A sailor adjusts the boom while chewing a piece of ginger root with theatrical slowness. Another tightens his sash like he's girding for battle, but instead of armor, he wears a faded tunic and sandals made from braided bark. Stylish, really functional and breezy. Someone cracks a joke about ending up in India by accident. Someone else offers a dried mango chip as consolation. You take it. It tastes like optimism and leather. Baraka's face is unreadable. You listen now, he says. Not just look. He taps his ear. Sea changes pitch when land is near. Or sharks. Or foolishness. You listen. The waves do sound different round her. Somehow, like they're pushing back. Then he taps his nose. Smell for cumin. Smell for earth? If you smell smoke, we're close to land or someone's boat caught fire again. Apparently, that happens. Once, a sailor fell asleep holding a lantern, set half his cargo on fire. He blamed a goat. Baraka says there was no goat. The boat dips again, then rights itself. Rain begins to mist. Cool and fine like someone drizzling soup through a sieve. You pull your shawl tighter. Around you, the crew moves as one, adjusting, checking, glancing at the clouds with practiced apathy. You ask Baraka what to do if the wind turns full south while you're aiming north. You don't fight the sea, he says. You apologize and adjust. The beauty of the dhow is in its flexibility. The sail, lateen-rigged and smart, lets you zigzag along the wind's tantrums rather than stall out. Tacking, it's called, or in Swahili, getting where you're going, eventually, hopefully, and probably wet. The storm, if you can call it that, passes as gently as it arrived. No lightning, no thunder, just a confused drizzle, a few impatient gusts, and the slow realization that you're not where you expected to be. Land peeks out of the haze ahead, But it's not the bold cliff edge of Pemba or the crescent cove of Kilwa. It's smaller, rockier, possibly haunted. Baraka examines the coconut map again. Socotra, he wonders aloud, or just an inconvenient rock. Either way, it's not on the route. But no one panics. You adjust. You drift. You breathe. The dhow veers slightly west. A gull calls from above, possibly the same one from before, still judging your sandal choices. A rainbow half-heartedly unfurls in the sky, like it forgot it was supposed to do something. You lean back. The danger has passed, or never arrived, or is still considering it. Either way, you're still floating, still learning. And if the coconut shell doesn't know where you are, well, maybe that's part of the magic. The sea is flatter now, like a page smoothed by careful hands. The dhow coasts slowly, as if it, too, is catching its breath after the moody misdirection of the morning. You're wrapped in a woven shawl that smells faintly of nutmeg and salt. Ahead, the silhouette of a harbor takes shape low buildings, sails like teeth against the sky, the gentle clatter of trade. This is not a city of marble or towering spires. It's a port built from coral stone and patience. Wooden jetties reach out like fingers, and at the end of one, a man in a red cap waves lazily. You've arrived in Kilwa, or maybe Mombasa, or maybe a place that only exists between naps. What matters is the welcome, the scent of pepper and cardamom in the air, the call of traders hawking glass beads, woven baskets, dried sea cucumbers, and once, allegedly, a parrot that could recite proverbs in Arabic. You're skeptical. Mzee Baraka ties off the sail with one hand and chews a clove with the other. "This is where we swap things," he says, gesturing to the other boats. Spices for silk, coral for cloth, and sometimes news for news. Swahili traders were masters of balance. Historians agree. They exchanged goods with India, Persia, China, even far off Java, long before certain European powers knew how to spell navigation. The system wasn't just barter. It was built on trust, repetition, and the subtle rhythm of arrivals and departures. Many ports had no fixed currency, just weights, measures, and the raised eyebrow of a seasoned trader. You step off the boat and your legs wobble like boiled cassava on land. Everything moves too fast, people walking with purpose. Crates being hoisted, goats bleating opinions no one asked for. A young woman offers you something wrapped in banana leaf. You unwrap it to find a wedge of tamarind cake and 2 sugared nuts. She nods once, as if to say, "Don't mess this up." You wander the narrow alleys, where coral walls sweat in the heat and wooden doors bear brass studs shaped like stars. Every now and then, someone calls out greetings in Swahili, Arabic, or a blend of both. "Karibu," welcome. "Habari ya bahari," how's the sea? You answer with a shrug. The sea is moody, but forgiving, like an old auntie with too many cats. At a spice stall, an old man waves you over. He smells like smoke and cinnamon. He's boiling something in a pot that smells simultaneously like medicine and dessert. "Tonic," he says, "for memory, or maybe sore feet. I forget." He tells you, between spoonfuls, about a time when a sailor traded a bundle of cloves for a full-length mirror, then used it to convince gullible villagers that he could trap ghosts in glass. He got very rich, the man says, then married a ghost. You're not sure if that's a joke, a warning, or both. In the square, children toss carved pieces of driftwood in a game that involves no clear rules, but plenty of shouting. Nearby, sailors lean against bundles of cloth dyed deep indigo and marigold yellow. The colors are impossibly rich, like something stolen from a sunset and boiled down into silk. One of them lifts a coconut shell strung with coral beads and taps it thoughtfully. "To remember where you came from," he says, "or to make it up if you forget. There is trade." Yes, you see baskets swapped for scrolls, lanterns for jars of honey, a monkey for a pile of ginger root. But more often, you see stories traded. The moon rose red last week. A ship from China brought mirrors shaped like turtles. A fisherman caught a squid with 7 eyes, and now he dreams in purple. These ports are not just markets, they're living libraries, with sea spray pages and salt-stained footnotes. And everything is whispered. Loud things sing. You meet a sailor who claims to have visited Madagascar and Zanzibar in the same month. Using only a paddle, a song, and a stubborn goat, he draws you a map in the dirt that looks suspiciously like a fried fish. You nod respectfully. Historians still argue about how far these Swahili traders traveled. Some say they hugged the coasts. Others believe they reached Indonesia. But everyone agrees on one thing: they always returned with something strange. Whether it be a rare spice, a new dance, or a slightly cursed mirror. Back at the dhow, Baraka is resting beneath the folded sail, sipping from a gourd. He opens one eye. "Ready to go?" he asks. "Or you want to marry a ghost too?" You shake your head. You've traded nothing, bought nothing, and yet your bag is heavier, with voices, with smells, with little driftwood facts tucked between your memories. The boat rocks, the sail flaps, and once again, you leave carrying no map, just a coconut shell and a pocket full of improbable truths. By now, the sea feels like a second mattress. You know its creaks, its moods, even its petty complaints, the way it sighs through the hull when the wind changes, the whisper of foam under the bow. You've dozed through it all, your cheek against a coil of rope, dreams slipping in and out like passing seabirds. But something in the air is different today. Sweet, spicy, a little smoky. Mzee Baraka sniffs once and grins without looking up. "Zanzibar," he says. The cloves are gossiping again. You sit up. Ahead, the outline of the islands begins to form low hills rising like sleepy shoulders from the sea, hemmed with palm trees and stone towers. The scent grows stronger. Cloves? Yes, but also cinnamon, maybe nutmeg, and the deep, dry smell of sun-warmed thatch. Zanzibar. The very word feels like a lullaby, a place that once supplied most of the world's cloves and more than its fair share of intrigue. A sleepy spice kingdom tangled in roots both sweet and sharp. As your dhow glides into the harbor, the water changes color-bright turquoise over coral beds, then emerald green where the shadows of dhows fall like brush strokes. The docks are lined with bags of spices stacked so neatly they look like sleeping guests. Sailors lounge nearby, pretending not to nap. You disembark, feet landing on sun-bleached wood. Someone offers you a clove bud, fresh and oily, as if to say welcome and chew this before you talk. You oblige. It numbs your tongue almost immediately. This may be part of the greeting ritual. You walk the streets of Stonetown, or maybe its earlier version, before tourists and guidebooks. Coral stone houses with intricate wooden doors rise around you, their balconies throwing patchy shadows across winding alleys. A woman with hennaed hands sells sweet rice in coconut bowls. A man naps under a tree beside a pile of ginger roots, one eye cracked open like a wary cat. You ask a question. He points to the sun, then rolls over. Fair enough. The spice market is a symphony in browns, golds, and reds, mounds of turmeric, tied bundles of cinnamon bark, and bowls of cardamom that look like tiny green pillows. And always the cloves dark, fragrant, packed tightly like little soldiers in glass jars or spread loose across mats to dry. Cloves are the beating heart of Zanzibar's economy. Past and present, historians still argue whether it was Omani settlers, Indian traders, or local growers who perfected the industry. But most agree it was the monsoon winds that made it all possible. Without those seasonal gusts, none of this fragrant bounty could travel. You pass a group of spice sorters, mostly women, their fingers stained yellow and red. One is singing a tune that has no real melody, but you find yourself humming along before realizing it. It's not catchy, exactly, just familiar. Baraka appears beside you like a ghost with a beard. He points to a low cart loaded with sacks and says, "Help me steal some wind." You help push. The sacks are labeled in both Swahili and Arabic, and one in French, for no reason anyone seems to recall. As you move, you realize the market itself breathes, contracting, expanding, pulsing with footsteps, laughter, bargaining. It's alive. On the edge of the market, an old man offers a tour, not of the town, but of his dreams. "Last night," he says, "I rowed a boat made of cinnamon sticks. It sank, but I floated on sugar cane." He's asking for no money, just someone to nod. You nod. Elsewhere, a group of children chase a dog wearing a flower crown. It's unclear if the dog minds. It probably doesn't. Near the shore, you find the drying rack's wooden frames where clove buds are laid out like sunbathers. The smell here is strongest. You inhale deeply and feel your eyebrows tingle. Good for memory, someone says, or headaches, or if you want to smell like dessert for a week. You ask if cloves were ever used for navigation. A sailor shrugs. "Not for direction," he says, "but for timing. When the cloves bloom, the winds change. When they dry too fast, storms come. The trees know more than we do." That night, you sleep aboard the dhow again. The sails are furled. The stars are out. The air is heavy with spice, thick enough to chew. You lie on your back and stare at the sky, somewhere between sleep and dreaming. You think you hear the cloves whispering, stories of other sailors, other nights, other lives. And maybe they are. You awake to a strange sight, a banana tied to the mast with a piece of seaweed. This is not breakfast. This is a warning. Baraka sees your expression and chuckles. "Someone's got jokes," he mutters, untying the fruit and tossing it gently into the sea. We don't tempt the sea with soft things. You've heard whispers about this before, about the sailor's disdain for bananas. But today, the full story unfolds. Apparently, bringing bananas on a boat is not just frowned upon, it's asking for trouble. Folklore says they attract sharks, that they cause cargo to rot faster, that they make you forget important sailing chants. One man swears he saw an entire voyage ruined when someone packed banana chips as a snack. "We lost the wind for 5 days, he says solemnly. The sea knew. Historians still argue whether this superstition came from spoiled bananas releasing ethylene gas, ruining nearby produce, or if sailors simply hated dealing with fruit flies in the middle of a heat wave. Either way, it stuck. To this day, seasoned captains sniff the air suspiciously at the scent of potassium, and bananas are just the start. As the dhow glides across the water once more, you begin to collect the full inventory of maritime taboos and strange rituals that have shaped Swahili seafaring culture. Don't whistle while the sail is up. It invites whirlpools. Don't wear red near the prow. It insults the ocean spirits. Don't count your coin pile aloud, or the sea might demand a share. As though, don't sleep with your feet pointing toward the stern. Bad manners? The spirits rest there. And never, ever insult the moon? You find yourself on edge, wondering if simply thinking about bananas will summon an albatross with an attitude. But Baraka reassures you with a shrug. Superstition, he says, is just a way to stay awake when you're too tired to think. Still, no one sings today. The air has that pause before the punch feel. The sky's too blue. The waves too polite. To change the mood, someone starts a game of Shaw. A kind of sea chess using driftwood pieces. The rules are unclear. Every time you think you're winning, someone flips the board and declares fish tide reversal. You nod respectfully, pretending that's normal. Meanwhile, you help patch a bit of sailcloth that's been rubbed thin. It smells of salt and coconut oil as you sew. An older sailor tells you the tale of the Pepite, mischievous sea spirits that steal wind and flip boats just to watch the sails flap. They hate arrogance, he says, but they love singing. He sings a verse, something about a jealous starfish and a lovesick crab. You try to hum along. The sea perks up, ever so slightly. Later, You notice a small shrine tucked at the back of the boat, a bundle of dried seaweed, a carved shell, and a feather from a bird no one has seen in 3 generations. For balance, Baraka explains. Not to keep us safe. Just honest. He offers you a piece of salted fish wrapped in palm leaf. You bite in. It's chewy, suspiciously spicy, and somehow reminds you of regret and celebration all at once. That night, as the moon climbs and the waves whisper secrets you're not sure you're meant to understand, Baraka sits beside you and holds up his coconut shell map again. This time, he traces one of the strings to a faint notch near the rim. This, he says softly, marks where the sea once swallowed a boat for being rude. You ask what kind of rude? Too fast, he says. Too loud, too sure. The dhow rocks gently. The sail flaps once, then settles. And you, wrapped in superstition and the scent of cloves, drift off again, half listening for the papeda, half dreaming of bananas that wink. Morning brings a strange calm, the kind where the wind doesn't so much blow as linger, and the sea barely remembers how to move. You sit at the bow, watching thin lines of foam mark your slow passage across the water. The sun glows gently behind a screen of high, pearled clouds, like a lantern behind a cotton sheet. Then you spot it, something bobbing up ahead, a piece of wood, a tangled rope. Mzee Baraka squints. Driftwood, he says. Then, after a moment, or a story, as you draw near, the floating clutter reveals itself. A length of knotted vine, a broken basket, and caught in the middle a fraying net, tangled and ghostly, waving slowly beneath the water's surface like a half-forgotten thought. You lean over the side of the dhow. We call these mitoya bahari, Baraka murmurs. Sea dreams. The ocean's old memories. There's more to this than poetry. Swahili sailors, like many coastal navigators across the world, have long read the sea not just by the stars and wind, but by what it carries. Driftwood, coral fragments, even the slick feel of jellyfish or the color of sea foam could indicate what lay ahead. Historians still debate how precise these methods really were. Some call them folk knowledge. Others call it instinct honed over centuries. Either way, Baraka treats every soggy leaf and tangled string as a message. He pokes the floating debris with a long bamboo pole. See that vine, he says. It doesn't grow this far south. Must have come from the delta. That means a river mouth nearby. And fresh water brings fish. And hippos. You blink. Hippos. He nods. Terrible sailors. No balance. You chuckle. But you're watching the water more carefully now. A sailor beside you pulls up a small stone from the sea, round and smooth, with a faint white stripe through the middle. He pockets it without a word. Later, you ask why? For luck, he says. Or boredom? Maybe both. Others on the boat begin comparing their finds, a shell shaped like a spiral, a piece of carved wood with an eye painted on it, a small fish skeleton bleached white by the sun. There's even a debate about a clump of seaweed that smells faintly of onions. One sailor swears it's a sign of changing currents. Another says it just means lunch is late. The dhow continues gliding over water so still it feels like you're sailing through glass. Then, suddenly, the air changes. Not in temperature, but in texture. It smells different, brighter, wetter, as if it's borrowed the scent of rain just out of reach. Baraka sniffs. Mouth of a river, he says again. Taste the air. It's sweeter. You do. He's not wrong. There's a gentleness to it, a hint of distant greenery. Sailors begin adjusting ropes. One lights a stick of incense and places it near the mast. To confuse the crocodiles, he explains. Apparently, crocodiles hate sandalwood, or they just prefer surprises. The river mouth appears a few hours later, soft brown water swirling into blue, birds wheeling overhead. The dhow dips slightly as it crosses into the fresh salt mix, and the wind hums a different tune. You hear frogs, insects, and something that might be a monkey laughing. Baraka lets the coconut shell map drift in a bowl. It spins, then slows. then stops. She's quiet now, he says. She listens here. You pass by banks of reeds, glimpses of people fishing in dugouts, and far-off music carried on the breeze. It's hard to say if it's real or just the river echoing itself. There's a moment when something splashes loudly nearby, too big for a fish, too smooth for a log. You all freeze. Then, slowly, a head rises from the water, eyes blinking. A dugong, perhaps, or a river spirit in a gentle mood. No one speaks until it disappears again. Then someone offers dried dates as tribute. Another taps the mast twice for good measure. The boat glides back out into the open sea, leaving the river mouth behind. The water shifts again from muddy green to deep blue. The air sharpens. The breeze returns. You look back at the debris field you passed earlier, now distant, just a shadow on the water. A reminder that the sea writes messages, and sometimes, if you're quiet enough, it lets you read them. And so, you do. You watch, you sniff the breeze. You trail your fingers in the water and listen to the stories it tells, not loud or clear, but in little bubbles and ripples, and in the way your boat leans slightly left, then straightens again. Tonight, the clouds roll in like tired cats and drape themselves across the sky. There's no storm, no fuss, just a steady grayness, the kind that makes the stars shy, and the sea a little more secretive. You lie back on the dhow, your head resting on a bag of cassava, watching the sail flap lazily. The world rocks gently, like a hammock between centuries. The crew, for the most part, is asleep. One sailor hums quietly in his dreams. Another snores with such conviction that the mast seems to vibrate slightly. Mzibaraka, however, is wide awake, perched like a heron near the stern, squinting at nothing. You don't sleep during a monsoon, he says, as if continuing a conversation you weren't having. You doze, you nap, you dream standing up. But sleep? No, sleep gets you wet. It's a common joke or truth among sailors. Monsoon season means half sleep, damp everything, and dreams that mix salt and thunder. If you're lucky, your boat doesn't flip. If you're very lucky, you sleep through the parts where it almost does. Still, even here, there are ways to rest. The dow's built for it, in a way. The curved hull rocks softly with each wave, its low profile, hugging the water like a cradle. Awnings of palm matting stretch overhead, shielding you from drizzle. And there's always a rope nearby to grab when the boat decides to dance without warning. You lie beneath one of those mats now, wrapped in a blanket that smells like sea and spice. Someone hands you a piece of dried ginger to chew, keeps the stomach from spinning. They say, also good for dreaming about mangoes. You chew. It burns gently. As the dhow creaks onward, Baraka taps the side of the hull 3 times, then mutters something under his breath. A sailor stirs and mumbles back, like a call and response from 2 men too tired to care who started it. Historians still argue whether these night habits were religious ritual, superstition, or just practical seamanship. One theory suggests certain boat-building techniques of Swahili dhows were inherited from Indian shipwrights, adapted to handle both deep ocean currents and the sudden, slap-happy moods of coastal storms. Either way, the boats are light, fast, and surprisingly stable, even when the sky gets sulky. And then there's the method of sleeping in shifts. Most crews divide the night into duru, or watches. You keep watch while others rest. Then you swap. No alarms, no shouting, just a soft nudge and a knowing grunt. That's the whole system. Tonight, it's your turn to rest. You wedge yourself between 2 sacks of trade goods, clove, you think, and something that smells like very enthusiastic cumin. The heat of the sacks warms your back. The sea cools your face. Above you, a sail creaks like a snoring ghost. You drift in your half-dream. The boat rises onto clouds and skims across the sky. You look down and see tiny islands shaped like spices. A starfish offers you tea. The moon nods approvingly. Then the boat jolts, not sharply, not violently. Just enough to remind you that the sea is always listening. You sit up, heart fluttering, but nothing's wrong. Baraka glances at you and shrugs. Wave got bored. He says, decided to interrupt. The crew dozes on. Someone's feet stick out from under a blanket, toes twitching like they're chasing something in their sleep. To pass the time, you try mimicking Baraka's coconut shell trick. You float one in a bowl of seawater and watch it spin. It wobbles to the left, then right, then spins slowly. You tilt your head. Baraka leans over and peers at it. You're dreaming of Kilwa, he says. Or you're hungry. Could be both. He reaches into a small pouch and pulls out a strip of barks. Sleep stick. He offers, you chew it. Or you smell it. Either way. You nap deeper. You take it. It smells of cinnamon, smoke, and something like toasted rice. You close your eyes again, and you dream. You dream of a harbor that smells like honey and coral, of a parrot reciting weather reports, of a goat navigating with a compass, of sails that unfold like flower petals, of a sea that sings lullabies in Swahili, and through it all, the soft creak of the dhow, the breath of the ocean, the distant laughter of someone who found a banana in their blanket. You don't remember falling asleep. You only remember waking to the smell of tea, the sky blushing pink, and the feeling that the sea, for once, had tucked you in gently. The morning air is thick with promise, and the low, humming quiet of a day not quite started. You stretch on the dhow's deck, limbs stiff from dreaming too long in one position. Baraka's already awake. Of course, cradling his tea gourd like it contains prophecies. He points a bony finger to the sky. No sun yet, he says, but the moon's still working. You look up. There it is, faint, pale, clinging to the morning like a ghost of last night's thoughts. The moon, it turns out, is more than a decoration in Swahili sailing life. It's a calendar, a compass, a warning, and a clock, all in one quiet orb. Each lunar phase tells a story. Full moon. The tides swell high. Traders make their moves. And fish go missing from their usual hiding spots. Waning crescent. Best to stay close to shore. Both wind and luck are unpredictable. Historians still argue whether Swahili sailors followed a formalized lunar calendar or simply read the night sky with the casual fluency of lifelong listeners. Likely both. Baraka flips open a small woven pouch. Inside, a set of coconut shell discs, each etched with symbols, moon markers. He says, for those who forget what the sky just said. Each disc corresponds to a phase, the waxing sickle, the sleeping pearl, the watcher's eye. He lays them out on the deck like a lazy game of memory. This one, he taps, tells us the wind will shift by dusk. And this one means the tides will pull west for 3 nights. He could be bluffing, of course. But the crew is already adjusting sail lines, tightening bundles, rearranging sacks so the boat's weight shifts ever so slightly. You ask how they know all this. Moonlight tells stories. Baraka shrugs. If you're boring enough to listen, you are. Today, the tides seem especially aware of themselves. The boat dips just a little deeper, and the foam traces new patterns around the hull. Sailors spit into the wind, not out of disrespect, but habit, a test. If it lands on your shoulder, change course. If it lands on someone else's shoulder, laugh and pretend you meant it. Around midday, you pass a small, uninhabited island, or at least uninhabited now. A few crumbling stone foundations remain. Baraka nods toward it. Used to be a moon temple, he says. They'd light a fire when the full moon rose. The sea would glow all night. You ask what happened. The moon got bored, he says. Or maybe someone forgot the right song. You glide past the island, its silence louder than the wind. By afternoon, the crew has unpacked a special tool, a float made of coconut shell, weighted with a small stone. They drop it into the water and let it drift on a string, measuring how the tide pulls it away from the boat. It's not just a child's toy, it's a lunar translator, a way of feeling the moon's pull through rope and water. Baraka checks it, nods once, then pulls it back in. Tonight, we anchor early, he says. Too much moon? That evening, you anchor near a chain of coral outcrops. The water glows faintly, stirred by currents you can't quite see. The crew eats quietly roasted cassava, salted fish, and a stew that tastes like ginger. Regret and home. Someone brings out a drum, not for dancing, just a soft beat to match the boat's gentle rocking, a lullaby in rhythm form. As the moon rises full and bright, Baraka lifts one of the coconut shell discs to the sky, lining up a notch with the moon's glowing edge. She's watching, he whispers. Try not to yawn too loudly. It's rude. You don't yawn, you smile. The sea, too, seems to hush. No wild waves, no howling wind, just the rhythmic tap of rope on wood, the soft creak of the mast, and the light of the moon splashed across the water like spilled milk. You lie back and close your eyes. In your dreams, the moon speaks in slow, sloshing syllables, reminding you when to move, when to rest, and when to simply float. And so you do. By dawn, the wind is already humming. It whistles softly through the sail, flirts with the edge of your blanket, then tosses a palm frond lid across the deck like it's bored and looking for a game. You sit up, blink twice, and sniff, because by now you've learned that the nose sometimes knows before the eyes do. Salt. Sure, always salt. But also the scent of crushed lime, damp rope, and something sharp, metallic, and strangely warm like warm stone after rain. Baraka's already standing, arms folded, staring out to sea as if waiting for someone to apologize. The wind's in a mood, he mutters. Not angry, just opinionated. Wind, in this world, is no mere breeze. It has a voice, a name. And sometimes, if you're not careful, a very long memory. Swahili sailors have more than one word for wind. Upepo is the general one, neutral, fair. But Kusi is the powerful south wind that drives monsoon travel, while Kaskazi brings the winter's breath from the northeast. And then there are the less spoken ones, short winds, strange winds, whispered only when the sail flutters wrong. You sit beside Baraka. He doesn't speak at first, just points. You see nothing. Then a ripple, a shift, a subtle smudge in the water's surface. A gust moves through the rigging and hums a low note, like someone tuning a forgotten instrument. That's a pepowaharufu, he says. The scented wind, it carries smells before it carries rain. Historians still argue whether these scent-based wind interpretations were real meteorological observations or poetic coincidence passed down as tradition. But here, on this dhow, your nose is the barometer, and today it tells you two things. Clove plantations ahead, the impossible rain before nightfall. The wind picks up, and with it, a change in the crew's posture. No panic, just readiness. One sailor adjusts the sail tension with 2 fingers and a humming tune. Another checks the hull for slack ropes. The dhow groans happily, boats like a bit of wind gossip. Baraka gestures for quiet. He closes his eyes, and then he starts reciting. Not a prayer. Not quite. It's a sort of sea poem. Spoken low, in Swahili with the occasional Portuguese drift. It names the winds. It flatters them. It offers clove buds and sweet dates in exchange for a smooth passage. Another sailor joins in. Then a third. Soon, the whole boat murmurs with the sound of old words wrapped around salt air. You don't understand it all, but the rhythm is clear. These winds are not tamed. They're courted. You ask Baraka how he knows when the wind is lying. He grins when it smells too sweet. Apparently, the really tricky winds are the ones that pretend to be helpful. They whisper in your ear, fill your sails just right, and then vanish mid-crossing, leaving you spinning in circles, muttering apologies to passing jellyfish. Someone nearby whistles. Instantly, 3 crew members throw small objects at him, dried seeds, a sandal, and one mysteriously available orange. We do not whistle on the sea, one mutters. It invites the jealous winds. You're learning to lighten the mood. Another sailor tells the story of Pweza wa Bahari, the octopus who once tried to ride the wind instead of the currents. He tied a palm frond to each arm and flailed so wildly that the gods gave him ink to make him disappear. He still lives, they say, blushing in sea caves, writing bad poetry. The wind shifts again. It's cooler now, with a bitter edge like tamarind without the sugar. Baraka nods. That's a people microfi, he says, the disagreeable one. Time to pull in, and just like that, the crew shifts. Sails are trimmed. Ropes are looped. The boat slows slightly, no longer racing the wind but dancing with it. A compromise. You sit near the mast, wrapping your shawl tighter, feeling the dhow settle into its rhythm once more. The wind circles like a curious cat, occasionally nudging a bowl, flipping a loose page, tugging at your earlobe. You whisper to it, just in case. By now, the sea has stopped trying to impress you. It no longer shows off with dramatic waves or surprise rain. Instead, it purrs along quietly, letting the dhow glide like a spoon across soup. You sit comfortably near the stern, watching the water curl and uncurl in gentle loops. Everything feels balanced until you hear a squawk behind you. A parrot. Not just any parrot, this one is bright green with a single red feather sticking out like an antenna of mischief. It's perched smugly on a crate of dried mango slices, head cocked, eyes too intelligent for comfort. Baraka frowns. Oh no, he mutters, that thing again. Apparently, this isn't a passenger, it's an intruder. Parrots don't belong on boats, says one sailor, spitting over the side. They cause division. You laugh. Division between truth and fiction, between crew and captain, between you and your lunch. And that's how you learn about Kasuku wa Mechumbili, the two-eyed parrot, so named because it always looks like it knows more than it says. Swahili sailors. It turns out, don't mind monkeys, goats, or even small cats aboard. But parrots? Too clever, too chatty, too likely to repeat things better left unsaid. Baraka recounts the tale of a voyage to Madagascar, when a parrot memorized every trade secret discussed aboard and accidentally repeated it to a rival dhow at the next port. That crew returned with ivory, he mutters. We returned with a sore throat and bad feelings. Historians still debate whether any such incident happened, or whether parrots were scapegoats for otherwise embarrassing trade blunders, but the stories persist. The parrot squawks again, something that sounds suspiciously like, "You forgot the limes," and half the crew flinches. You watch it hop across the deck, nibble a string, then perch atop the coconut shell map bowl like it owns the place. One sailor attempts to shoo it with a folded mat. The parrot cocks its head, blinks slowly, and refuses to move. Someone offers it a roasted peanut. It accepts. You suspect bribery. Later, as you approach a small coastal settlement for supplies, dried cassava, smoked fish, more questionable fruit, you overhear a quiet debate among the crew. Some want to trade the parrot. Others want to accidentally leave it behind on a crate of ginger. One simply wants to name it and hope for peace. It ends up being called Captain Clove. You walk through the village market with Captain Clove on your shoulder. The locals nod, smirk, and make room. Apparently, parrots aren't entirely unwelcome. They just come with reputations. You buy a bundle of limes, partly out of guilt. The parrot approves. That night, the boat rests in calm shallows, anchored just off a sandbar that smells faintly of seaweed and something like toasted sesame. The stars come out slowly, shy after last night's moon. Baraka sits at the prow. The coconut shell beside him. The parrot hops over, settles in beside it, and makes a low cooing sound, soft and strange. Maybe it's apologizing, Baraka muses. Or maybe it's planning a coup. You lie back and close your eyes, letting the gentle slap of water against the hull lull you into that in-between space, part memory, part dream, part oddly specific bird-based gossip. In your dream, Captain Clove leads a crew of parrots on a miniature dhow made of driftwood. They argue about trade routes, steal cinnamon sticks from sleeping merchants, and always arrive on time. You wake smiling. The real parrot is asleep now, one foot tucked up under its belly, beak buried in feathers. Maybe not so treacherous after all, but just in case. Baraka mutters a small blessing and places a garlic clove beside the bird. Insurance, he says. Night falls like spilled ink across the sky. The stars blink on slowly, shy and scattered, and the dhow rocks gently in their reflection. You're drifting between places again, between sleep and story, past and present. The parrot snores softly, if such a thing is possible, its beak twitching like it's arguing in its dreams. Then, without warning, the water begins to glow, not brightly, not all at once, just here and there, soft sparkles flickering near the bow, like someone sprinkled crushed fireflies into the sea. You sit up slowly, eyes wide. It looks like the ocean is breathing stars. Baraka sees your face and grins. Mwanga wa matumbawe, he says. Coral light, bioluminescence, tiny sea creatures, plankton, mostly stirred by the motion of your passing hull. Light up in self-defense or celebration? No one's quite sure. Historians still argue whether ancient sailors understood the science or simply assumed magic. Either way, they noticed. You dip your fingers into the water and the light follows you, rippling around your hand in little arcs of green and blue. It doesn't feel different, just sea wet. But your skin now glows faintly where it dripped. It's not just pretty, it's practical. Swahili sailors learned long ago that coral glow often signals shallow reefs, places too dangerous to sail by day, but just visible enough at night thanks to the shimmer of disturbed plankton. Tonight, the dhow skirts a known coral shelf, and Baraka stands at the prow, eyes on the glowing patches like a conductor reading music. He mutters directions left, slower, straight bass, not on stars or shells, but on the sea's quiet sparkle. One of the younger sailors swears he once saw the reef write words in bioluminescent swirls. It said, "Turn back." Shh. He insists, "We did, then we found a storm behind us." You ask what would have happened if they hadn't. He shrugs. I wouldn't be telling the story, would I? As the dhow drifts along, you begin to notice other things. The silence of fish just below the surface, darting through light trails like shadows caught in daydreams. The slow pulse of light from a jellyfish that bumps gently into the hull and disappears with a sigh of color. And then there are the coralli wa kimya, the silent corals. No glow, just perfect stillness, the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Baraka says sailors avoid those places when they can, not because of danger, necessarily, but because silence at sea is almost never natural. Even the parrot senses it. Captain Clove has stopped squawking. He's wide-eyed now, staring at the light with the same awe you feel, or maybe he's calculating how to bottle and sell it. You're not sure. One sailor drops a net gently into the glowing water. It comes up laced with faint light, wriggling with tiny fish and slivers of seaweed. He holds up one finger, says, "Good luck," and lets them go. Superstition. Maybe you don't mess with things that glow in the dark for free. You ask Baraka if the light ever gets too strong, too bright to be safe. He nods. Once, only once. We sailed into a bay where the water lit up like fire. Everything we touched glowed for hours, even our teeth. We didn't sleep, just watched. The next morning, we found we drifted into the wrong port, but somehow made the best trade of the year. He says this with a shrug, like it makes perfect sense. You lean over the edge and watch as your own reflection flickers in the water, lit by tiny creatures you can't see, only sense. Your face glows for a moment, then fades. Far ahead, the coral reef ends, the light dims, darkness resumes its reign. But now, you're different. You've seen the sea right in sparks. You've followed a path no map can show. And as the dhow glides into deeper water, the last glow fades from view like a sentence gently finishing itself. The morning comes slow, reluctant. Like it too stayed up watching the sea sparkle all night. Today is trial day, not a trial by storm, or mutiny, or even the parrot's increasingly judgmental stare. No, today is the coconut compass test, Baraka's favorite, and yours too. Though you didn't know it until now, you sit cross-legged on the deck, the sea calm as porridge, the sun politely filtered behind early clouds. Before you, a large bowl of seawater has been set, just slightly sloshing with the boat's subtle sway. Floating in the center, one half of a coconut shell, carefully notched around its rim and weighted with a small stone inside. Suspended on the surface, it spins, wobbles, corrects, and settles. The test isn't to see if it works. It's to see how it works. And more importantly, when it doesn't. Baraka explains, some days the shell lies, some days it sings. You raise an eyebrow. It's an old tool, he continues, a humble thing. But it listens to the sea in ways we forget how to. Historians still debate whether coconut shell navigation was a functional method or symbolic a teaching aid, maybe, or a memory device for winds and current patterns. But for Swahili sailors, it's both instrument and ritual, a way of anchoring attention, of communing with the sea. Baraka hands you the shell. You try. You place it gently on the water. It turns slowly, then pauses. A string of tiny bubbles trails from the edge. The crew watches in casual silence, one chewing cassava, another plucking lint from his shirt. Nothing urgent, just curiosity. Now tilt the bowl, Baraka says. You lift one edge slightly, the water shifts, the shell drifts. Then it corrects itself, realigns to a path it seems to prefer, a delicate little nod to the southeast. See, Baraka grins. Even a floating cup knows more than half the people in port. You run your finger around the shell's rim. Tracing the notches, each one marks a win, a memory, a lesson. This one, Baraka says, tapping a deeper groove, marks the storm of the year the fish stopped singing. You don't ask, instead, you observe how the shell responds to subtle changes. A bit of wind, a tap on the side of the bowl, the movement of the dhow itself. One crew member brings out a second shell, smaller, lighter, carved with different markings. They float it beside the first. It spins in the opposite direction. Someone says that's a good omen. Someone else says it means you're cursed. The parrot says nothing. Throughout the morning, you test again and again. Wind gusts, sail shadows, the pull of the current. Each time, the coconut shell drifts, spins, and then like a leaf remembering its branch finds a line. You start to feel the rhythm, too, not just of the boat or the sea, but of the shell itself. The way it prefers to spin when the boat faces east. The way it hesitates when the tide is on the turn. Baraka leans over and says, softly, the sea doesn't like arrogance. It teaches gently first, then with salt. You nod, reverent. You feel a little like a student, a little like a magician, and just a little ridiculous floating a fruit shell in a bowl while a parrot judges your technique. Later, the shell is returned to its pouch, wrapped in palm cloth, and placed beside the coconut string star map. You ask if there's a ceremony? Baraka shrugs. Only if you fail. The day winds down with slow waves and the sound of someone playing a single-note melody on a bamboo flute. You lie back, sun-warm and salt-drowsy, as the dhow rocks gently under a cloudless afternoon. In your dream, you're inside the coconut shell, floating, spinning, drifting along a sea that hums lullabies. You know exactly where you're going, not because someone told you, but because the water does. When you wake, the bowl is empty. The shell is dry. But in your chest, something still turns gently southeast. The shoreline emerges just before dusk, not dramatically, not like a storybook cliff, but slowly, like a memory returning. You see it first in the flight of birds, curved, darting arcs of wings that suggest the nearness of trees. Then the scent shifts less salt, more earth, more green, more goat. Yes, definitely goat. Baraka squints into the distance and grunts. Home, or something like it. Oh, you don't recognize the covey, but the dhow begins to change its behavior anyway. The crew grows quieter, their movements more deliberate. Ropes are coiled tighter, mats are rolled, and someone produces a handful of dried flowers and tosses them into the sea without explanation. The parrot, Captain Clove, flaps twice and lands dramatically on the prow, like it's reclaiming a throne. The coastline gets closer. You can see terraces carved into the hills, a few clay rooftops, and smoke drifting from cooking fires. It smells like lentils and fish. Familiar, warm, final. Baraka pulls out the coconut shell map one last time. He doesn't float, it just holds it in his hands and watches. The light hit the notches. Last journey for this one, he says. Time to make a new map. You ask how long it takes. He shrugs. A few voyages, a few mistakes. The dhow eases into the harbor. The water here is shallower, greener, filled with lazy seaweed and patient crabs. Children run along the docks, calling to no one in particular. A man waves with one hand and holds a basket of lemons in the other. You wave back. Ropes are tossed, caught. The sail drops like a curtain, and just like that, the journey ends. But no one rushes to leave. The crew lingers, stretching slowly, cracking jokes about the parrots snoring and debating whether the dried mango was a success or a crime. You sit for a moment longer, taking it all in. The rhythm of ropes being untied, the slap of bare feet on wet wood, the sound of goats complaining about things they don't understand. A small girl walks up the dock holding a coconut shell in a string. She holds it up and says, "Teach me." You smile. Baraka smiles too. "Tomorrow?" he says. "Tonight? We eat." You step off the dhow, your legs wobbling with that familiar sea after effect. Like gravity is confused by your loyalty. Everything smells louder on land soil. Smoke, cinnamon, and the sharp citrus of someone peeling limes nearby. You walk toward the lights, your bag full of nothing you bought and everything you learned. The parrot follows you. At dinner, someone serves grilled fish wrapped in banana leaves. No one comments. You lie on a woven mat beside a low fire. Sparks drift upward. Voices murmur like waves. Someone snores. Probably the goat. You close your eyes. You don't dream of storms or trade. You dream of water. Yes, but the quiet kind. The kind that cradles boats, not breaks them. The kind that remembers your weight and welcomes it. You dream of a coconut shell floating in a bowl, spinning gently, slowly, always turning southeast. And now, with the journey ended and your feet once again on steady land, let the waves fade to memory. Let the sounds of rope and wind and the slow hush of water draw further away, like a lullaby whispered from the far end of a quiet harbor. The parrot has gone to sleep. The crew is curled beneath stars. Even the coconut shell rests now, its notches catching nothing but the moonlight. There's no need to remember each reef, each story, each scent. They'll find you again when you need them, perhaps in a dream, perhaps on some future evening, when the world is noisy and you need a tale that hums instead of shouts. The sea isn't always calm, but tonight, it is tonight. It sways beneath you like a cradle, its breath slow and even, like yours. So let your hands relax, let your thoughts drift. Let the images of wind-whistling sails and firefly-lit waters dissolve gently, like sugar in warm tea. You are safe now. The journey is done. The boat is anchored. The stars are on watch. No need to chart your course. No need to turn the shell. Just float. Just breathe. Just sleep.